For my signature project, I decided to choose anger as my subject, and I did so because as I was looking through the different possible subjects and topics that we could do, I felt like they were very interesting. Like, obviously, I find the different phenomenon in psychology very interesting, but none of them really stuck out to me because they didn't seem very applicable in my life. But as hard as it is to say, anger is something that I do kind of deal with myself, and at times can be very hard for me to control. So I thought that that would be a good opportunity for me to learn how to self improve and learn like what anger really is, why it's caused, why it can get out of control, and how people can learn and improve and not let it take such a big hold on their lives, and how I can do the same. And so I read a few articles, obviously, because we had to, but I really liked a couple of the points brought up in the first article that I discussed in my paper, which is the Rothenberg article, and how he talked about how anger and hostility are two different things, and how anger is an alerting phenomenon that we experience, and like an emotion that we experience, that's really our brains telling us that there's a problem and that we need to change it somehow, that there needs to be a correction, and that our minds getting kind of frustrated by this this frustration in our lives, that's what causes us to become angry. And then hostility is anger, but then there's like a desire to lash out and inflict harm attached to that anger. And so one of the important distinctions that he makes there is that if anger isn't controlled, anger isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it's an emotion that causes us to recognize that there's a problem. That's a good thing. But if it's not controlled, then it can lead to hostility. And obviously, hostility can make us say things or do things that can be detrimental in our lives, either with our relationships with other people or just like things that we have, whatever. It's not a good thing to be hostile, obviously. And anger turns into hostility, not just because it's an intense anger. Like, that's something that some people think, that you get really angry and that's what makes you hostile. But what happens generally is that when we bottle up our anger and we don't confront it, eventually it boils over, and that is what leads to hostility. And it's just this overflowing, and this anger can't be kept inside anymore, so it bursts out, and a lot of the times it's in the form of hostility. And one way that we can stop that, we can stop anger from turning into hostility, is by good communication, and just by being able to let others know how we feel, or be able to get that anger out in some way, at least release it on the form of just like expression and like venting. And that can help us to be able to avoid having to lash out if our feelings of anger are intense enough. But again, hostility isn't just caused by intense anger, it's by a lack of communication, or acting on that anger without thinking. And so our bodies are constantly, like I was saying, in this kind of, obviously our bodies always need to be in a state of homeostasis. We're constantly trying to work back to a level where things work and how our bodies want to be. And when we're angered, again, that's this signal that things aren't going well and we need to correct something. And sometimes that hostility and that lashing out at least is thought of as being a way that our anger can be lowered and brought back down to a homeostasis level. But that's not always really how it works. And one of the ways that I do that is by like, this is one of the reasons that I chose to do anger and like applying to myself was like complaining. Like, I don't like, my hostility isn't really physical or anything like that. Like, that's, I feel like I can control that, but it's usually verbal. And like, I'm kind of like passive aggressive, and like, I'll be like, wow, this really sucks, and I'll just like not really let something go. And that doesn't help me at all. And so that's one of the reasons that I wanted to study this and kind of learn like how I can actually improve. And another article was done that I studied was Murano. And in this article, they talked about how some of the reasons that we don't communicate are like social acceptability, gender expectations, fear of judgment, or fear of the repercussions of like our emotions and our thoughts. So we may be like scared of how people will think of us for feeling the way that we do, and that's one of the reasons that we don't let our feelings out, and we don't always let ourselves deal with things in the healthy way, which is venting and talking and figuring things out rather than just lashing out. Another thing that they talked about was how like anger can distract us and cause us to not be able to focus on things that are more important and would maybe even make us feel better. If you're really angry, you can't really do the things that you need to do, that you know you need to do. And it can be a really big distraction. But anger can also be a positive. It can be a motivator if we know how to control it well enough. Like I was saying, anger is our brains recognizing that there's a problem. And if we are in tune with ourselves and our emotions enough to be able to use that and recognize it, we can say, hey, there's a problem here, and in order for me to feel better, I need to fix it. And that can be very motivational. But if we're not careful, and if we're lazy, or if we choose to not go about things the right way, anger just causes us to not actually deal with the problem, not actually fix things, not actually be productive, but usually cause things to go in the exact opposite way that we would like them to. So we need to be able to recognize our emotions, not act right away, be able to think things through and think, why am I feeling this way? What are the outside and inside factors that are leading to this emotion that I'm feeling right now? What's causing me to feel this way? Why am I letting myself feel this way? And how can I fix it? How can I be better? And once we know what to do, we have to act so that those feelings don't just stay bottled up inside. If you figure out what you need to do, you can't just sit there, because then, like I was saying, your emotions continue to just well up, and that pressure is getting closer and closer to bursting out. So you need to start to act. And that's when anger can become really beneficial and actually helpful. And so, kind of in conclusion, I thought that this was really cool to study and be able to understand a little bit better. I feel like I'm generally a pretty happy person, but I also feel emotions very intensely, and that's why when I am angry, I tend to like get pretty angry, and I feel things very extremely. So I wanted to learn how to better control that, and I feel like I have. And I feel like maybe I haven't employed all these things yet, but at least I know how to, and I know how I could possibly help other people too. And I think that this class in general has been really beneficial and a great way for me to see things about myself and others, and how I can improve myself and help others with other things that they're going through as well. So yeah,